And as usual, I am Dr. Luis Fonseca, a U.S. Navy hospital corpsman retired after 22 years of active duty in the United States Navy. During my time in the Navy, I was deployed 8 times, with 5 of them being boots on ground with Marines. My first deployment was with uh, Task Force Terror 1. I was involved in the Battle of Al-Nazari on March 23rd of 2003. Due to my actions on that day, I was also awarded the Navy Cross. Quick disclaimer: just because we have Dr. Andrew Berry, who is a dual licensed psychoanalyst and psychologist, this is not, I repeat, this is not in any way, shape, or form intended to be any type of therapy, any type of diagnosis or treatment. Please, we ask you that if anything comes up during tonight's conversations that you feel the need to speak about, please contact your medical care team, especially your mental healthcare providers. And with that, next up is my partner Nate.
And I'm Nate Emery. I'm your token grunt. Got 12 years enlisted, 10 years as an officer in the Marine Corps, total of 33 years in the DoD. My combat tours were in Operation Desert Storm and in Mogadishu, Somalia. And tonight, our guest is Mr. Glenn Towery. Glenn was quartermaster in the U.S. Navy, is a Vietnam combat veteran. He's a 100% service connected disabled veteran and a member of the VFW. He enlisted in August of 1971 in Los Angeles, California, deployed to Vietnam in June of 1972, and then was medically evacuated from the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam in October of 1972. And then soon after, he was discharged in November of 1972. He attended San Jose City College and San Jose State University and graduated from Columbia College in Hollywood, which is a satellite of the Columbia University um, of Chicago. And he graduated as a valedictorian, magna cum laude, in August of 1997. He is the founder of the Veteran Suicide Prevention Channel. He founded the Austin Veterans Art Festival, and also their Veterans and Military Film Festival in Austin. In 2013, he was a national gold medalist in the VA National Veterans Creative Arts Festival in Milwaukee. He's received a congressional commendation from the 117th Congress in 2022. And also in 2022, Glenn and his organizations are featured on the cover of the September issue of VFW magazine in a 7-page article featuring him and his two organizations that he founded. As the founder of AVA Fest, he helped create the first veteran military film festival in Austin in 2023. Glenn was discharged in November of 72 for a non compensable personality disorder discharge. However, he took the U.S. Navy to task and applied for retirement. In 2016, the Board of Corrections and Naval Records rejected that claim. He persisted, and in 2024, Glenn took the BCNR to court and he filed a case at the U.S. District Court in Eastern Virginia. In April of 2025, Glenn prevailed, won an unprecedented retirement from the U.S. Navy, backdated for 53 years to 1972 after discharge from the Navy. The BCNR relented, changed their decision, and then changed Glenn's retirement, fully upgraded as an honorable discharge instead of a general discharge. It was a historic case at the BCNR, and he did this under through Judge Leona Brinkma. Is it Brinkma or Brinkman? Brinkma.
Brinkema. Brinkema.
Um, Brinkma. Okay. Glenn's career as an artist, performer, writer, and filmmaker continues to grow. He is presently producing the first television series in American history about healing veterans based on his award-winning script, Mission: Transition Condition. Glenn has been happily married to the noted published artist Juanita Cole for 26 years. He's got a ton of stuff in here about his bio, about his family and their service. And it's too much to go into all at once, but I hope we'll get into some of that. But next, it'll be Doc Berry will introduce himself and get us kicked off.
Hi, folks. My name's Andrew Berry, also known as Doc Berry. I am a psychologist and psychoanalyst, and I specialize in working with veterans and first responders fighting with post traumatic stress. Um, Glenn was introduced to me through one of our prior guests, the one and only artist, Pete Blotty, who figured Glenn would be a fantastic guest. And based on that bio and the conversation that Glenn and I had the other day, I tend to agree with him. He has many stories to tell. He has seen his own version of man's inhumanity to man repeatedly, and he has prevailed. And that is a general theme we seem to run into a lot here on Two Docs and a Grunt. People have been places and things, seen things that no human being ever should have, and somehow they fight their way back to the light. And welcome aboard, Glenn. And here's my thought-provoking question to kick things off, after which I won't be speaking anywhere near as much. Contain your enthusiasm. You've seen our stuff in action. You've seen uh, at least one of our webcasts, and hopefully you sat through the old vet talk that I gave at the 48. So when you see us in action, where does it take you? What makes you want to come on with us tonight? And we're happy to have you. Go.
Number one, I recognize that we are kindred spirits in the sense, not only in the sense that we are veterans, but we have gone through something and prevailed. Each of us, in our own way, has grown through that experience. For me, the suffering that I went through for so many years, even having prevailed, I still do not feel that I have totally been compensated spiritually for that loss. There's things I can never get back. When I came back from Vietnam, I couldn't be a parent to my daughter. And I lost her to the streets. That will haunt me for the rest of my life, but I feel like our Father put me here to not only endure things like that and understand, in order to be able to understand what other people have gone through. It's painful. But pain wakes up things in people. People react to pain in different ways. My first reaction to pain was I was angry. I wanted to hurt someone because I was hurting. And then when I saw in my spirit that I really wasn't the kind of person to hurt people, I didn't really get satisfaction from that. I turned to hurting myself. I did that for a long time. I blamed myself. I hurt myself. I drank till I couldn't stand up. I took barbiturates. I did some crazy things. But at the end of the day, there was still something in me that kept telling me, Glenn, you can do better than this. And it really was the voices of my ancestors, like my grandmother, who always had great dreams for me. You know, I'm the oldest in my family. The shame I felt that my brothers and sisters, whom I tried to guide all my life, were seeing me suffer and struggle the way that I was doing. The real thing I think that really pulled me out of it, even having lost my daughter, was I had a son. He needed me. And it was his need of me that saved me. You know, I try to analyze this and look at it in so many different directions. I think because I was a big brother, you know, If you've ever been a big brother, you know that everything your brothers and sisters do below you is your fault. You should have been there. That's the way parents, you're the parent when nobody else is there. You know, you're the one. And you might watch them get a spanking, but you feel the brunt of it. Even if nobody says anything, you feel that. So I think being a big brother had a lot to do with me being able to turn it around. When I was in boot camp, um, when I first got drafted, I didn't get drafted. What happened was on my block and in the surrounding community, I saw the guys showing up in the green and gray cars in the uniforms, going and knocking on people's doors and telling them that their child wasn't coming home. This was something that was I was in South
Wow.
Central Los Angeles, and this was kind of happening at a regularity. Most of the people, some of these guys I didn't know because I was, you know, 14, 15 years old, but I was seeing it and then I was understanding the upset, the hurt, and the pain. So I
Wow.
decided I knew I was going to get drafted, which I was right. So I decided I would go to what I felt was a safe military order, which was the Navy. Who gets shot at really in the Navy? Who has to really kill somebody in the Navy? So that was my thoughts. I'm going to join the Navy. And I did. And I didn't even have a high school diploma. I never will forget it. The recruiter was sitting there. He says to me, he said, "You don't have a high school diploma." He said, "We're the Navy, dude." You know. He said, "Well, let me give him a phone call." He said, "Uh-huh. Yeah, I got this guy. He doesn't have a high school diploma. He wants to join the Navy." And yeah, well, yeah, his grades are okay, but yeah, really? Really? And he hung up the phone and was doing some paperwork. And I said, "Well, what did they say?" He said, "They said if the body is warm, ship it. Welcome to the Navy."
Oh,
So that's how I wound up in the Navy. And when I got in the Navy, it was a sense of pride for me because, well, I had never. One of the big things for me was when I was in South Central, I never joined a gang. Gangs were everywhere. They proliferated everything. And I thought anybody that takes 10 guys to beat up one or two people is a punk. And I didn't want to belong to anybody like that. And I had pressures because um, I wasn't the best fighter in my community, but I was a big brother, so I would fight anyone over my brothers and sisters. I got my butt kicked a couple of times, but guess what? I didn't. I don't. I can only think of one person that ever had to fight twice through that whole period. I had what they call street cred. I wasn't trying to be bad or anything, but just don't mess with mine. And we cool. If you do, I'm gonna kick your ass, or you're gonna kick mine. You're gonna have to kick me. So my brothers and sisters, if you meet them, they'll tell you that. Like I'm very proud of them. My brother, he joined the Navy because I was in the Navy, and he was honorably discharged. My sisters, both one sister joined Marine Corps, the other she lost a leg, and another sister joined the Air Force, and she's probably the most famous person in my family. She actually won Survivor. She won $1 million on
wow.
Survivor. That's my sister Vesepia Tower.
Oh,
She's a
wow.
Leonard now. And
That's awesome.
yeah, huh? It was interesting because when she told me that she was going, I told my friends, I said my sister's going to win Survivor because I know that girl. And my friends were like, "Yeah, all right." And man, when she won, the night they found out,
that she won, my phone was ringing off the hook. People were asking me for lottery numbers, you know. And so I actually really somebody asked me for a lottery number, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that, you know. So if I had the winner, I'm going to save that for myself. So what happened to me? I went through boot camp. It was a beautiful experience. I bonded with the men in my company as we do. We've all been through boot camp. And you know, we get there as individuals, and somehow they fashion us as one. We somehow, it just, one day you realize that you got a new family. It's not something that obviously happens, you know, it's just one day. It dawns on you, wow, because you fail and you succeed together. And you feel the same things. When you come up short, you don't like it. You know, we didn't like it when they came and tossed tossed all of the beds and sheets out of our company because we didn't pass inspection twice. The black bands came and tossed, and we were so embarrassed. Tossed everything out. Everything was laying on the ground. But you know what? We went through that together, and it shaped us up. We got together and we met. We said that will never happen to us again, and it pulled us together. And when we finally graduated, we had the banner. We had the company banner. We were the top company when we passed in review. Thing I remember about that was there was no racism in boot camp. Everybody was a worm. Everybody was nothing. You were nothing till you passed in review. You had to earn it. And it gave us the desire and the pride to do it. One of the things I'll never forget is in the seventh week when I was in San Diego, is where I went to boot camp. We had the smokers, what they call the smokers, and the guy in charge, I was an RCPO too. I don't know if they have it in other boot camps, but I was selected in RCPO too. And I was told because I was a little flat-footed that when everybody else was going up, I was going down. That he put me on the outside of the company, collocated, so it wouldn't be obvious. You know, I don't believe that story. That's what he says. I was a good RCPO too. You know, I took care of our guys, but they asked me. The company basically volunteered me for the smokers. I was like, what? Okay, I'll do it. And I went to the smoker. A smoker, if you don't know, is 3 rounds boxing. Each company puts up a man, and it's not a tournament, but you know you fight 3 rounds, 3 3-minute rounds. You box, and I never will forget that. It was a hell of a battle with this guy I'm boxing. I was pretty good, but you know this guy was really really good, and um, towards the end, because he was a slugger, I was a boxer. He motioned for me to come to the middle of the ring. And I was like, my pride just went out. I was like, okay, I'm not going to avoid you anymore. I stepped into the middle of the ring and we duked it out there. And all those guys just went crazy. And at the end, I won. Now, let me tell you about winning like that. I was so exhausted as they announced that I won, I collapsed. I collapsed in the middle of the ring. And these guys got came out of their seats. I guess they were so entertained by the fight. Picked me up and hand carried me back to the dressing room. I like floated back on this army of men, and I will never ever forget that feeling of them cheering the way that they were. It was a real sense of pride. And then about a week later, I read in the newspaper that the guy that I had beat was the Golden Gloves champion in Illinois. They put it in
Oh
the paper,
wow.
the fight in the paper. I was like, wow, I did that? Okay, I'm ready. So we graduated. When we graduated, before we graduated, I wanted to be a corpsman. I wanted to be what you were, Dr. Lewis. And the RCPO one, he wanted to be a quartermaster. Well, of course, being in the Navy, they reversed it. I became a quartermaster. He became a corpsman. And we looked and said, "You want to train?" Yeah, we
Right,
want to
right.
train. So we trained. So I went home for the obligatory, I think 1 week or 2 weeks after boot camp. And when I reported back, I went to reported to A school. And I went to A school. A school was tough. It was a math building, and this guy met us there, and he said it was about um, 40 guys in the class. There were about 12 African Americans, and he pulled the African American to the side and he said, "They sent you here to wash out." He said, "What?" Said, "They sent you here to wash out." Said, "I looked at your records. All of you got bad math scores. Nobody in here has good math scores." He said, "They're under pressure to send African Americans to A school right now. And they sent you here to wash out." He said, "I'm going to make sure some of you make it. If you pay attention, if you put in the extra, you will make it." So out of the 12, 4 of us graduated. I was the last one. My score, the cutoff was 80. If you didn't get an aggregate score, that means all of the tests and the final test of 80, you washed out. My score was 82. I was the last person they called, and everybody after that washed out. So that was another sense of pride. Somehow I made it. I was a quartermaster. I got that striker's badge. I was like, I was really, 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 really happy. And I'm reporting to the fleet. And I get to my ship and I bring in my orders, and the captain is standing there, and I'm standing at attention. He never gives me an at ease. He never looks at me. And I'm standing there and he's just looking at my paper and throws it to the side. I mean, I'm standing there about 30 minutes. I'm thinking, am I going to get it at ease? Finally, um, the other one of the other officers comes in and gets my paperwork, and he welcomes me aboard the ship and tells me where I'll be, takes me, shows me where the quartermasters work at, where I will be working at, and tells me that I need to report directly to the mess techs. Now, the thing about it, and I know this because they told us in A school, when you report to your shift, right, you're supposed to be able to work 6 weeks in your billet. Everybody, every new booty got to go to the mess techs, okay? But you're supposed to work 6 weeks in your billet before you sent there. They sent me there right away, and that's when the trouble began to start for me. I knew that I wasn't welcome. Nobody really wanted to communicate with me. I was treated almost like a non-person. People didn't even look at me most of the time when they gave orders. It was like I was in a virtual hell. There was no kindness, no respect, no anything. And then I go down to my work area one day, and all of us work there. Somebody has taken a Sharpie and wrote the N word a couple of places on the wall. So I go back and I report it to the XO. I said, "Sir, I need a report that someone is writing racial epithets in our work area on the wall where I have to work at." And the captain accuses me of doing it and tells me that I need to go clean it up. So I go clean it up, but I've been through a lot of stuff now. and it's just too much. So when I get a chance to go home on the weekend, I don't even come back for several days. I'm like, I'm AWOL. But for me, it was like I didn't know what to do, and it was hell. You know, I come from one environment where I was successful, where I was a part of everything, where I was a part of the company, where I was, you know, a part of everyone. And here I am now in an environment where I'm like by myself. And then on top of that, some of the African Americans that were on my ship, because all of them were virtually none of them were strikers, kind of had an attitude towards me. I had one guy tell me, I didn't even know him. You know, you think you big shit. You know what? Just because you got that, you better watch yourself around here. You can get your ass kicked here. Okay? You ain't nobody. You one of us. You us. Okay? So in my mind, I'm like, damn. This is a hell of a situation here.
Did,
What am I going to do? I don't know. Yes.
does it kind of seem like boot camp set you up with an expectation that you were, the fleet was going to be like that family that you found in boot camp, like you said, that succeeded, worked together as a team and bonded?
Absolutely. That was the other part of it. My expectation was dashed. It was nothing like I had imagined it was going to be. It was nothing like boot camp. There was no camaraderie. Not for me. You know,
And it and if I may not necessarily put words in your mouth, but did it feel like it was a form of betrayal once you got to the fleet and you really had no one to turn to, where there was, people within your same rate, your chain of command, like you said, your CO, or other sailors that were also Black or African American? That did you feel some a form of betrayal from that as well?
yeah, it was like being, um, I felt as though I was really alone. And then, though, to be fair, I began to be accepted by the African Americans. They began, I think, to take note as to how I was being treated. And and even the guy that had said that to me, I remember he kind of buddied up to me a little bit. You know, had been in the fleet longer than me, um, and we actually became, I won't say friends, but we became someone um, that that we could get along. You know, we could say hi. You know, we could. He saw that I wasn't trying to, be bad. I wasn't an officer or anything like that. I remember when a black officer did visit our ship for us, and oh my God, even me, everybody, we were like, oh my God, there's a black officer here, and we were like, we had never really seen one. We had never seen a black officer in the Navy. He came on our ship. We were gawking. He came up on the bridge, and I was beaming with pride. You know, I was beaming with pride. He spoke to me, and I said yes, sir, and told him what I was doing. He asked me what I was doing, and I told him, and it was a sense of pride for all of us, because most of us, even though I was a quartermaster, which is a highly respected position in the Navy, as you know, you've been in the Navy. Um, they had taken a lot off of it. So I I go home. I'm having these issues. Around my brother's birthday, I went out and I did a little drinking, and I'm on my way back to the ship. And I was on 32nd Street, Naval Base. Um, there was a big field that you could walk across that would take you to the docks where the ships were, instead of having to walk the square. But it was big and huge. You had to walk across it. And so I'm walking across that. I'm not paying attention to other people walking across that. And all of a sudden, I'm blinded. Something goes over my head, and I'm being hit from every direction, being called the N-word, hit from every direction. And I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, I didn't have any warning. And then I think this guy saved my life. I heard somebody say, hey, what you guys doing? Leave him alone. Something like that. And by that time, that's the last thing I really kind of remember. I remember waking up. I was in the hospital in the emergency. I think I woke up before then. When they were picking me up, I kind of came to. I was wondering what was going on, and I wound up, in the emergency room hospital, and the doctor said, "You've been drinking and you had a fight." And I said, "I didn't. I really can't remember anything that happened, but I don't think I had a fight, And he asked me my name, and I couldn't say my name at the time. It was just that dramatic. It's actually in my medical records, and these are some of the points that helped me to win my case, because I didn't even know who I was. So he put in there that I had a severe concussion, and I spent the night, and they released me in the morning. I remember it was my brother's birthday, because I was supposed to go home that day. And the captain was going to put me on captain's mask because they were calling it a fight, and I knew that. So I just left. I said, I'm going to go spend the day. I'm going to go celebrate my brother's birthday, my baby brother's birthday. And that's what I did. I got up out of the hospital bed. Instead of reporting to the ship, I got in my car and drove to Los Angeles to be with my brother, celebrate his birthday. And when I got back, of course, there was some problems. I was on captain's mast, and I was, I had to stay on the ship for 2 weeks and a whole bunch of other stuff. But still, I got a chance to celebrate. But I told him at the time that I was having these problems because of what was happening. This was before even the black guys started opening up to me on the ship. All of this kind of happened. As a result of what happened to me, is when it seems like that they started reaching out to me like, dude, who was it? Who did what? Who did it? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't see anything. I couldn't. They threw a coat or something over my head. I don't know. Then I went home, and I was at home for 3 days. I was supposed to be on a week, and I got, of all things, a telegram at home. It was from the Navy, and the telegram said, report back to the ship within 24 hours. I was like, what's going on? So I drove back. When I got there, we had a muster on deck. They mustered us, and they told us that we would be shipping out in 2 days to Vietnam. That it was either the USS Parks or the USS Ranger had been hit, and that we were going to be the flagship, and we were sailing straight over to replace them. And they had us to write letters. We couldn't call home or anything. They collected our letters, and they told us that these letters will be mailed after you left. We couldn't even call home and say we were leaving. And
what ship were you attached to again?
RUPERTUSDD85.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The USS Rupertus. RUPERTUS. DD851. So I was on a small ship. We only had we had less than 400 men on my ship. When we played games with the U.S. war games with the USS Kitty Hawk, one of our jobs was when they shot the Dud torpedoes at the Kitty Hawk to intercept them with our ship, with the hull of our ship, and that was success when we were able to do that. So we only did that one time, but I thought that was really, really, yeah, that's it.
Bring back some memories.
Yeah, it does. You see that, what people don't realize, you put 400 men on something like that, everything someone else is feeling, it's impossible for you almost not to feel. That's a small space for that many men. Any ship is. I look at the Kitty Hawk. I remember seeing that they had 2,000, almost 2,500 men on that ship. It looks huge, and you think about all of that personnel. That's a lot of personnel to be on a ship like that. And that's what happens when you're in the Navy. You're squoze in, and you have to. If you don't become a company, if you don't find a way to support each other, then it's hell. Ships that are able to do that is hell. So my problems really started when we got to Vietnam. There was a ship called. I was in. First of all, we were in a couple of firefights. While we were there, I was on the bridge navigating the ship, and then our XO passed an order that everybody under a certain grade, I believe it was E3, would have to hump shells. I had never humped shells for a 6-inch gun. My training, they didn't train me to do that in boot camp. My training was as a quartermaster after boot camp. And when we were out doing different things and firing the guns just for practice at Catalina Island and places like that, no one ever said, you got to come and learn how to do this. I went into combat handling munitions in the real deal. I remember one time I was there, I'm handling these shells, and I hear this whistling. I'm like, oh, what is that? And this guy told me, he said, they're shooting at us. He said, feel good as long as you hear that whistle. That means they missed. It means the shot went over our bow. And I remember looking at all of these shells and powder bags that I was loading, and I thought, damn, if we take one here, there'll be nothing left of me. But you know what? I just kept on working. I kept doing what I was told to do. But before that, I want to go back there. There had been a lot of racial tension in Vietnam in the future. Started with a ship called the USS Haseyampa. They were treating the black sailors on that ship so bad that they came back in for leave. The Haseyampa, I believe, was an oiler, a refueler. And the black men refused to go back out. They said, we're not going back out with you because of the way you're treating us. And you treat us even worse when we're at sea. And so there was a big scuffle. They tried to actually force these guys, these black guys, these black sailors, to go out with them, and they refused, and it turned into a fight. And then those fights began to spread. And when the news spread, the USS Kitty Hawk had a riot. This is in the history books. I was serving on the USS Rupertus at that time, and things were bad there. Our sailors, the black sailors especially, were grumbling about all kinds of things, all kinds of unfair treatment. that they deemed to be unfair. You know, a white sailor would get into trouble for the same infraction that a black soldier did, and the white soldier would get basically a slap on the wrist, and the black soldier would get the book thrown at him. And people took notice. So there was a lot of anger about that. The riot on the Kitty Hawk made everybody especially mad because they took all of the black Marines out of the Marine Brigade and sent only the white Marines in to quell the violence. And when that word spread, it just a ripple of fear. I can't speak for everyone else, but I can speak for myself. A ripple of fear went through me. I was like, this is crazy, man. And this is getting even crazier. When they're riding on the fleet, you know, and then you start hearing about other instances on other ships. And then the next thing you know, one day after humping shells, I go and I lay down in my rack because I'm so tired. And when I wake up, there's blisters all over my arms, my neck, my face. So I report to the medic what's going on. Oh, it looks like you got a skin infection of some kind. You know, here, take this salve, put on it. These things just kept coming. They would blister up, then it would pop. They were all over my skin, and then this cream would ooze out of it, and then it would become a scale. I looked like a monster. I was dying. It felt like the light was coming right out of me, and nobody was even willing to do anything about it. I really resolved myself to the fact that I was going to die, and I remember people from my unit coming down from the bridge looking at me the way that I looked. I looked like a monster. I will never forget it. So just about the time I thought this is going to be it because I was having breathing issues. I was medevaced off the ship to Subic Bay. I found myself in a MASH unit in Subic Bay. One of my bunkies, I was in an open area, was a Marine, and he came in wounded, and he looked at me one day and he said, "Hey, dude, hey." I was like, "Yeah, what? Where you get the Willie Peter Burns?" I said, Willie, what? Willie Peter Burns. Where you get that? I said, "What's that?" White phosphorus. He said, "I've seen it before." And all of a sudden I realized that I had been set up. I can't tell you. I can't explain what that did to me. It was like something inside of me broke. I felt that my own men that I served with at war used my ignorance against me, knowing that I didn't know that shells were leaking, that I should not touch them. And when I tell you something broke inside me, I am not exaggerating. Something deep, deep deep inside me just broke. And I told the doctor, I said, I need to go report that someone tried to kill me on my shift. And they were like, what? They never told me what I was in there for. I said, what am I in here for? They wouldn't tell me. I said, what is this on my skin? What's going on? They would not tell me. So one day they told me that they would have somebody come in so I could file my charges. But no one ever came. So one day when they weren't paying attention, I pulled that IV out of my arm. All I had on was that ragamuffin butt out stuff that they gave me because they had taken all my clothes. I pulled it together as much as I could, and I left the wing. And I asked somebody, I said, where's the XO's office? And they told me where it was. It wasn't that far. And I started to the XO's office determined to file charges, to start an investigation over what had happened to me. And then I heard some guards calling me. I looked behind, I was maybe 300 yards away. But I didn't stop. I kept going. When I got to the XO's office, there was no one there. And I just kind of panicked, and I looked around, and there was a steel trash can outside of his door, and I picked it up, and I knocked out the glass, reached my hand in, unlocked the door, went in, took a letter opener off of his desk, and sat down. When they got there, they said, come with me, and I said, I will come with you after I get the opportunity to file my charges. I said, I have a right to file charges. I have a right to report what happened to me. And one guy said, the white guy that was there, he said, no, you don't. He pulled out his gun and he pointed it at me. He said, put the letter opener down. I said, I don't have to put the letter opener down. I'm not going to put the letter opener down. I just want to file my charges. If you leave me alone, that's all I'm going to do. And there was a Filipino guy with him. He pushed his hand down from the gun. He told me, he said, listen, we don't want to harm you, okay? I said, well, then just don't harm me then. He said, I promise you, if you just put that letter opener down, come with us. I personally will make sure that you are able to file your charges. Whatever it is that you think that someone done to you. And I looked at him and I saw in his eyes what I felt to be the truth. As soon as I put that letter opener down, they swarmed me. Somebody stuck me with a needle. And that was it. I never got a chance to file those charges. I was taken back to the MASH unit. The doctor gave instructions that I was to have to take that medicine whether I refused it or not, and force it in me. Next thing you know, I was on the belly of a plane, flying into the Oakland Naval Hospital, where I was terrorized by making me take Thorazine. I don't know how much Thorazine they gave me. I did have an awareness that what they were doing to me was wrong. I knew that. And what that Thorazine did, it wiped away my memories. By the time, I don't know how much of that stuff they gave me, but by the time they released me, I had no thoughts anymore about what had happened to me. I was just concerned with not being beaten down and forced to take a drug that I didn't want to take every 4 hours. That was my concern. This went on for weeks. So I left out of the military, totally forgotten about even wanting to file charges. That memory was gone. And I was just glad to not have to worry about being beaten down 2-3 days a week, forced to take something that I did not want. And I could not apparently tolerate it. By the time they let me off, let me out, I just had no recollection, but there was something inside of me over the years that kept eating at me. It was like, you know what? Why can't I remember? What am I missing? It always just felt like something was missing. Something. It was driving me crazy. And I began talking to myself. I began doing all kinds of stuff. My friends and family, they were like, they thought I was just crazy. And I was just really trying to find myself again, trying to find some equilibrium, trying to, to tell you the truth, it's by the grace of God that I'm able to be here and tell this story. I should have been dead. I should have been homeless. I am probably one of the most improbable stories that you may ever hear. I'm proof that there is a God. I'm proof that there is goodness in other people in the world. The fact that I'm sitting here talking to you, because it was those people and our Father. It could only have been that combination that has me where I am today. I hated white people for a long time. I don't know if it was hate. I won't say hate is a very strong word. I'm not really a hater, but I was very disrespectful. I didn't want to be around white people, period, because of so much that had happened to me. But that's not what our Father had in store for me. I've always been a person that hating is not a natural thing for me. It never has been. I'm a lover, really. Most of the people that know me, they would tell you black, white, whatever. I'm not a person that goes around angry. I'm not. I believe if you're angry, you're hurting yourself. Only you are feeling that. But at the time when I was going through this, when all this was really, really fresh in my life, there was no way I could reconcile that or understand it. I was just in the pit of that emotion. And then I found theater, how I discovered the art. I remember when I found theater, I decided I wanted to be an actor. And I always wanted to do the most dramatic, the most angry, the most crying, the most, just tear down the stage, role. And I didn't know I was treating myself. I didn't know it was therapeutic for me to do that. It took a long time for me to understand that. That was the reason why I wanted to be an actor. That was my outlet. And even one of my teachers told me, said, why don't you try something funny sometime? You're a funny guy. I said, no, I prefer the heavy drama. And then one day it kind of occurred to me years later. The thing, so let me go back. So what turned it around for me, I think, was the arts. I started acting, first of all, and I developed not only did I develop a talent, but a group of friends that were all artists. They all understood. I think they understood things that I didn't know. I remember I had several big episodes of PTSD. One time it's still hard for me to talk about it, but I'll just say I got really done very dirty by the police. I was living in a very nice place, and they didn't like it, and I was so messed up that something clicked in me, and I just walked away. I was living in the marina, and I left my door open, and I just walked, and I just couldn't look back, and I just kept walking, and I became homeless. I never went back. Never. I left everything. And my wife, she met my friend who helped tell this story. So I've been with all my theater friends who love me for weeks. And I don't know how long I had been out there. And I was still wearing basically the same clothes and everything. And I was standing on the corner, and she said, Glenn? And I looked up, it was Neff, one of my theater sisters. And I said, I recognized her. Oh, hi, Neff. How you doing? How you doing? She said, fine. She said, where you been? We've been looking all over for you. I was like, well, you know, I was gone for a while, and I'm getting me a place now. And she said, no. She said, you gotta come up for a minute. Her brother had just passed away. I was saying, no, I gotta go there. She said, no, she said, please just come up for a little bit. And I was so tired. I went up. She said, look, she said, why don't you take a shower and give me some of my brother's clothes? And she did. And after I came out of the shower, because when you're homeless, not just no matter what amount of cardboard you put on the floor or on the ground, that cold will come up through there. You know, it's going. I mean, you can have it this thick. It's going to come up and get you. That ground just, it just becomes a delivery point from the ground, and it's hard to sleep at night because people will roll you for what you've got. If you're gonna sleep, you sleep in the day. Or you sleep someplace where where you can be safe. You look for places like that. So I fell asleep on her floor, and her brother's big old, he's twice my size in his clothes. And when I came to, I was ready to go, but she told me, she said, my friend Edmund, she said, Edmund came just looking for you, And she said, please don't go. And Ed was my mentor as an actor. He's very famous man. I was really blessed to know him and to be loved by him, for him to be my friend. He was really the father I never had in many respects. And when we got there, he said, where in the hell have you been? He said, I'm too old for this shit, Glenn. He said, I got a 2-bedroom apartment. You're coming home with me. I was like, what? You're coming home with me? I don't want to hear no shit. And, you lost everything. We're going to have to get you some clothes and stuff because you can't walk around me and all that big baggy ass shit. And I was saved by love. That was the moment and the person who saved me. Those two people. It was the love. And after receiving that kind of love, I really questioned myself. I said, Glenn, what the hell are you doing? You are somebody, I mean, people love you. People care. Because I wasn't even in contact with my mom and my brothers and sisters. I was too ashamed for that. I was too ashamed to ask somebody for a quarter. Like how people panhandle and stuff. That just wasn't me. I'd rather just be hungry or whatever than to do that. I was too proud for that, or I don't know if it was pride or whatever. For some reason, I just couldn't find myself to do it. So even though the VA had turned me down for 100% disability, I went there and they said no. He took me to the Social Security. Social Security made me 100% disabled. Because I talked to myself a lot, because they said I was not able to manage my own funds, and so they made him, the person to manage my funds. The check would go to him, but the way that he did it, he would work with me and say, okay, so you need to buy yourself some clothes, you he'd do that. He said, now this is what you got in the bank. This is what you got left. What you want to do with this? And that helped me a lot. And I found my footing because of that. And I stayed with him close to 2 years. One day I came to Ed, I said, Ed, I think I can manage my finances and my funds now. He said, I think you can too. He said, let's go down and talk to him. And 6 months after that, I found my own place. Moved out, I got me a car. Still wasn't able to work, but I was. He had an acting theater group, and I worked with them as a stage manager. And the theater group was nothing but stars. I mean, they were all black stars. Esther Rowe, Lynn Hamilton. I mean, you can just. I don't know if you can imagine. If you go and you look up Edmund Cambridge, you'll see that he was just. I remember sitting one night. I went to Cicely Tyson's. Where they do your career thing. I can't think of the term of it. And she saw us come in, and she waved. And we went to her table. She sat us at her table, and I remember Miles Davis was sitting there. They were married, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Cicely Tyson and Miles Davis. So we're sitting there at the table, and Cicely she had took me by the hand, and she was holding my hand on the table, and Miles was sitting there like this. And I was thinking, Miss Tyson, I think you should probably let go of my hand. But she refused to let go of my hand. She held my hand almost all night. And when we left, Miles Davis, I cannot tell you what his voice sounded like. He never said anything. And when we left, I said, Ed, what was that all about? I mean, Miles Davis never said anything, and Cicely Tyson was holding my hand. He said, since Cicely is very sensitive, she knows a lot about people, and she probably just picked up something about you. And he said, you have to understand about Miles Davis. Miles Davis comes from St. Louis. He said, St. Louis, he said, the part of St. Louis he comes from, he said, on the weekend, they cutting each other up in there. The things he's probably seen. So, if he doesn't say anything, that's a good thing. So I said, okay, well, it was really good The other thing that saved my life was I had my son. Now, in between that, I lost my daughter, and I still can't talk about it. It just, I still can't talk about it. It was that painful, not to be able to be there for her at a time when she really needed me. My oldest child, my baby, and but I still had a son, and I continued to check on him. And then one day, his mom showed up with him at my place, and she said, "He won't listen to me. He's getting in all kinds of trouble out there. You know, if you don't want him going to the system, you better take him." I said, "Go sit down on the couch." And we were together. He was 11 then. We were together since then. I finished raising. Well, me and her, but he stayed with me. Yeah. And that really saved me. Seeing those brown eyes looking up at me, what we having for dinner, what, what's going on in life, what am I going to do next? It made me more, it was like being a big dad brother. The best way I can explain it, because I didn't really have my father in my life. So I didn't really know what it was like to be a dad. I really did not really know. I tried to be a father to my daughter, and I just blew it. I just came out. When I came out of the military, I was just too fragile. There's too much going on. And I couldn't do it. And since I failed my daughter, but I didn't fail my son. We have a very close relationship today. And he is very successful. He's got a master's degree from American University. He was in the Marine Corps, served in Afghanistan. He called me up and said, "Dad, guess what? I'm a radio man." I said, "Oh, yeah, that's great." Because I understood what that meant.
Yeah.
But he even called me one time from on the satellite call. I said, "Can you do that?" He said, "No, but I'm doing it because I miss you." And he just said hi. So he said, "I'm just here for a few minutes, And so then the best thing after that happened to me, I continue to be best. Excuse me. I found this wonderful woman who blessed me with marriage. I only knew her a few months when I asked her, and I felt sure she was going to say, "Well, I got to get to know you better, before I trust myself and my child to you." But she married me. And yeah, I'm a happy man. That's been a big source of my healing. I tell you, love is a powerful thing. It's more powerful than hate. It's more powerful than all of those things that I've gone through, because I could tolerate those because I have love. When I didn't have love, I could not tolerate it at all. It was like being in the desert. But that's when I tried to kill myself.
Man is not good alone, right?
Huh?
Man is not good alone, right?
Man is not good alone. No. It's not just alone, like for love, because I've had a lot of love in my life. I'm very, very fortunate And that's the reason why I think why I founded the Veteran Suicide Prevention Channel, because I really moved to Texas to be a filmmaker. And a guy that he wasn't my best friend or anything. I was in a PRRC, which is the highest, it's the day treatment program. You go 5 days a week. Um, and it's the highest level for PTSD treatment, um, besides being hospitalized, just being put in a hospital. Um, they caught that. And what started that, and I'll talk about that very briefly. I was doing well. I was working. I had a nice job. I'm married. Everything's going like really cool. I don't have PTSD no more. It's just like everything's just going beautiful, And then one day I go, my car. When I left to go to Vietnam, I had left my car on the base in San Diego. Through the medevac, through everything that I went through, 30 years later, I remembered my car. And for some reason, that tore me up. I still don't understand why, but it did. And I had a involuntary symptom. My eyes just continued to water like I was crying. I wasn't crying, but my eyes were watering. And the kind of job I had, I was working with children in a mental health facility as a counselor, and my boss came to me and said, "Glenn, what's going on?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, we're all like kind of a little upset. You got to get this checked out. We don't know what's going on, but we're worried about you. You got to get this. You got to find out what's going on. So I'm gonna give you some time to find out. Okay? I'm gonna give you some sick leave." And my wife told me, I went home and I was just depressed. And my wife told me, she said, "Look, I did not marry you to see you go down like this. I don't know what's happening." She said, "But you got to get up off your ass and go to the VA." Well, she didn't say it like that, but that was the intent of it.
That was an interpretation, right?
Yeah, that was it. And so I went to the VA, and this doctor that was there, he reminded me of my executive officer, and I didn't want to have nothing to do with it. The one that had all the trouble. I thought at first I looked at him like, "Are you a psychiatrist now? You damn kidding me?" And but it wasn't him. Um, but he asked me. I said, "I don't like you because you remind me of someone who did terrible things to me and my wife. Am I supposed to like you for that?" So he was very smart. He went and he found a little cute black girl that was in college and told her to come and take all my information. Right? I didn't see him. I didn't see him anymore except for when I was leaving. And then the next thing I know, they called me and told me that they were putting me in the BRRC program and told me that they really thought that I should come. And so I did. And miraculously, uh, you doctors probably understand this more than I ever will. Um, Somehow we became, I won't say friends, but I began to trust him more. He wasn't like in my face or anything. I saw him every now and then. He always had, something encouraging to say. He always let me know he was watching what was going on with me. He liked encouraging me to continue to come. You know, my telling me that he sees the progress I'm making. Then one day he asked me to come to his office, and I did. And I never mentioned he didn't. For some reason, he didn't look like that guy anymore. Isn't that interesting? He didn't look like him anymore to me. And he told me, he said, Glenn, he said, what? He said, I just want to know what would make you feel better in your life? What could bring your joy back? And I told him, I said, I feel like my dignity was taken from me from what was done. And for the VA to keep turning me down for 100%, you know, never taking any of that into account. And I said, I feel like that I deserve a 100% disability. And I said, I think that would be a start. That would be a big help because I wouldn't have to work and I could work on other things. I could work on myself, you know. So he said, here's what I want you to do. He said, I want you to bring all of your military records to me. I'm not going to promise you anything. He said, I will promise you that I will look at them very thoroughly. He said, and if I find that the circumstances warrant you getting 100%, he said, I will fight for you. So I got all of my records to him. And for 2 years, every 6 months or 3 or 6, 4 months, something like that, I would go to his office and I would see my files with sticky notes on them, different places in his office, right? We would talk, we would talk for a while and then I would leave. And then one day in November of 2012, the phone rang and he said, can you come to my office when you get here? And I said, yeah, sure. And I went to his office. He told me, he said, Glenn, he said, I didn't want to say anything to you. He said, but you have been awarded 100% disability, totally complete.
That is just amazing that he went through all of that and did all the work for you and took the time and care. That's just, I mean, man, that's unheard of. And that's what it means to actually have somebody's back. That's amazing.
He did that. And he told me, he said, everything that you claimed was true. You claimed that the VA was being discriminatory towards you. He said, it's true. He said, it's all in your files and it's all in my report. He said, and so I just want to let you know that you weren't hallucinating. What you were feeling was true. And I took that truth that he gave me, then Dr. Strack, I will never forget it, what he did for me in my life. And I decided I was glad that I got the 100%, but I needed to discover more memories. After I thought about that car, it was amazing. More memories started coming back to me. They were just coming back to me about what happened, about, everything. Everything was just like flooding back. I don't know how that works, but the car triggered it, and those, and I think those being in the PRC. And so I started putting my case together and I went and I filed at the Navy. and that was in 2016. And the Navy was they were so terrible, you know. They talked about me, they talked about my mama, they talked about my brother, they talked about my grandmother, right? They talked about everybody to the extent that I didn't want to even try it again. That's how bad it was, that first
Yeah.
experience. And then I had a friend that worked with me though. His name is Amos. And Amos told me, he said, it got close. You have 6 years statute of limitations that you apply. And he told me, he called me up with about 6 months left in 2024. And he said, Glenn, if you don't go after these people, you'll never forgive yourself. If you let this next 6 months go, he said, I know it was painful. I know what you went through. He said, but you got to stand and fight. You got to deliver. He said, this is your dignity at stake. And so I said, okay, Amos. I said, but you got to work with me. I said, I can do it, but I need a partner with me. He said, I'm with you, bro. That's why I called you. And I learned the difference. And I want to share that with the world. You know, the BCNRs and these military organizations, they can be, they're not bound by the law. They can be discretionary in their opinions, okay? But when you take them to court, when they have to deal with statutes and laws and things like that, they can't be discretionary. They can't talk about your mama. Don't mean nothing. And it's not gonna gain them nothing. Okay? They gotta prove by law that they don't owe you nothing. And I put together one hell of a case because my memory was coming back and it was firing. And the more that I worked, the more I recalled. And then this happened, and then that happened, and this law says that, and that law says this, and you know, I was denied due process with the way I was released, and you know, all of these things, these things came together legally for me, and it was so much that I filed in court.
And I wanted to add the people listening, when Glenn says he filed, he doesn't mean his lawyer filed. You represented yourself pro se in court, correct?
Yes, I did.
Oh shit! Wow, wow, wow! That's even more amazing.
Yeah,
I
that's a
didn't have
lot
an
of homework.
it was not easy. I'm telling you, it was not easy, but I was determined, and I began to understand that I wasn't just doing this for myself. I was doing this for others. You know, I
More than you
trail,
know.
and I want to say to anybody out there that's listening, if you've been denied by a military board, you know, and you know that you're right, and they talked about you like a dog, and they put you down and tried to make you feel like you're nothing, tried to make you feel like you don't have a case, take them to court. Because all of that stuff that they did to you, that they said about you, means nothing in a court. The law, they have to deal with the law. If they bounced you out without giving you a physical examination, that's against the law. Okay? If they try to say that you have a personality disorder and you don't, well, how do you prove that? It's the things that you did. You've been out 4, 5 years, 10 years that show that you do not have a personality disorder. That's the law. Personality disorder doesn't just dissipate and disappear. It's a part of you. Okay? So if you don't have it, you don't have it. If you do, you do. And if you've been going to the VA, so what I would say to you is, a lot of us have been messed over this way. Be strong, believe in yourself, especially when you know that you've done nothing wrong, that you're a victim, and stand up. When you stand up, you're not just standing up for yourself, you're standing up for all of us. Like now, this precedent that I set should tell a lot of veterans. They went back 53 years. That's unheard of. It, I was told it's never happened. 53 years in retirement. It gave me an honorable discharge that I deserved in the beginning because it was dishonorable what they did to me. And there was no
Amen.
way they could get around it.
I'm so
It's
glad that you said all that because, Glenn, there are two people that I could right now give you their names that are in my support group that are in that exact situation. Personality discharges, they're currently 100% permanent and total at the VA, and they do not have their retirement. And they've been looking for somebody to show them some example. And when I saw your bio, I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, this is exactly what we've been looking for. And that's why I said more than you know. This is going to help some people. Your story just, and I couldn't help but as you're telling the story, I'm like, man, why wasn't this story coming out when Denzel Washington was in his 20s so he could portray this? Because this needs to be a movie. I swear,
right.
if I ever get to meet him or some other filmmaker, and Doc Barry, I'm thinking about Charleston. If I run into somebody, I'm going to be like, look, you need to watch the story, and you need to be finding people to portray this in a movie because this this story is just amazing. Not just amazing with what happened to you, but how you persevered through it, how you overcame, how you found a woman that came up alongside you to hold your arms up in the middle of it all. It's just it's amazing. The story needs to be told even bigger, you know. And on top of that, you kind of glossed over. You spent a whole day holding Cicely Tyson's arm or hand.
Right.
That
Right.
She
I
was
know. I'm
so
like
nice.
that woman is beautiful in her 60s and 70s.
Yep.
You know,
She
I would have never
was.
watched that
man.
hand ever again.
Yeah, I felt
Yep.
like not watching it, but Ed. So this is where Edwin was. He taught me because I was meeting a lot of stars, right? And so he told me, he said,
Yeah.
"All right, look, I don't like the way you act when you meet stars. Okay, you don't glare at stars. You don't act. You don't goof off. Okay, you don't do none of that." He said, "So here's what you do. Imagine you're looking at them sitting on the toilet." I said, "Really?" He said, "That's just to begin with. He said, once you kind of get that, I need to take the edge off you." He said, "You are just as much as any of these people that you're meeting. You could be just as big as any of them someday." He said, "But it starts
Yeah.
with you, you know, not goofing over them." I just watched
Yeah. Yeah.
a a the story of Juanita Moore. I don't know if you know who she is. Her life. She did Imitation of Life. Tremendous
Oh,
actress, and she was like almost like a mother to me. She really was. She was just so sweet. And in the middle of the documentary, there I was. I was surprised. I was like, wow, they got it. I wasn't, they didn't have me on video, but they had pictures of me, you know, uh,
wow.
performing with her and other people. So, yeah, that was good. So yeah, so that's the most important thing. And I love the work that I've done for veterans. I couldn't have cured myself of, I never did hate people, but I was very leery of people. And now, I've learned that people are who they are. Don't judge a whole race of people because of your experience with a few sad souls, because there are good people
Amen. Yep.
of every ethnicity. There's people out there that's just trying to help others. And I learned that through the process of creating the Veteran Suicide Prevention Channel, it was very healing for me because I wasn't, even while I was going through all this stuff, I wasn't on my own pity pot. I was thinking about somebody else. I was worried about them. I was trying to make a way for them to find, and so I had no time to feel sorry for myself. I had no time to, it was, in a way, it's a selfish act when you do something like that because you're involving yourself with others, trying to help someone else. But in so doing, you don't really leave a lot of room for self. But it's a good thing too, because when you leave too much room for self, sometimes, you can fall into a pit. And when you keep reminding someone else not to fall into that pit, who else are you reminding? You're reminding yourself. So I love the work I've done with the Veteran Suicide Prevention Channel. I remember once I had to sit on the phone with a guy with a 45 in his lap, about to kill himself. And one of the young guys called me and they said, Glenn, you're the oldest person in our group. And I knew this young fella. He said, he's about to kill himself. He said, and I told him to wait. And I called you. He said, will you talk to him? And I said, I was scared as hell, man. I said, yeah, put him. I never did anything like that before in my life. I said, yeah. I said, put him on. And we double teamed him. We talked to him, and we loved him up, and we uplifted him, and we understood his situation, what he was doing, and we told him this too shall pass. This is one of my greatest things to say to veterans, especially if they're suicidal. Listen, this moment that you're experiencing, you'll get past it tomorrow. The next day, it will pass. It'll be like it never happened at some point. Right now, it feels like the most important, most critical thing in your life, but this too shall pass. It will pass. And by the time I spoke to him about an hour and a half, the other guy left. And that helped me with the channel because he said something that really caught my attention. He said, Glenn, I haven't eaten anything all day. I said, you haven't eaten? I said, well, there's one of your problems right there. I said, where you at home? He said, yeah. I said, while we talking, I said, put this phone on speakerphone, go fix yourself something to eat right now. Go do it. And I was talking to him while he was fixing himself a sandwich. And man, when he started eating that sandwich, it was almost like magic. He began, his whole outlook began to change. And I felt good enough about 45 minutes to an hour later to say, I'll talk to you later. You're not going to harm yourself, right? He said, no, I took that gun and I put it away. I said, good. I said, we love you. We need you to stay around. So your son needs you. That was one of the big problems. His wife had left with his son, and it tore him up. So I see you put up veterans. Sir?
Veteran Suicide Prevention Channel. Is that vspchannel.vet?
That's it. It's our pride and joy. It's like, so it started off with the idea that late at night, the veteran was having a problem. There was really no one for them to speak to in many cases. A lot of veterans didn't like to call the suicide hotline. So we created a channel that you can go there and you can actually take therapies on the channel. You can take mindfulness. You can, certain things are too difficult to take. But now this is the actual channel here, but it's not our real channel. This is our website channel. We have a Roku television channel that's 24 hours a day.
I saw that. I love that.
You love it?
I just saw the link. I'll be watching that tonight.
So please share that with everyone because that channel has over 800 pounds on it. And it's some good stuff on it. It really is. But this channel, but this here is to, I call it a short range channel. It's good for someone if they are not feeling good. If they're, I say to everyone, you see, if you are a person who's experiencing suicidal thoughts at present, please call the Veteran Suicide Crisis Hotline. This isn't for that. But if you are just feeling depressed and you need to be uplifted, we got some really great things on there. You know what's really good are these videos where soldiers invite their families. They're coming home. We got a bunch of those. It messages to veterans just how much people really do love them and how much they need to stay around for those who love them. When you know that you're care, that's the love will save all of us in the end of the day. Now, what do you say to a veteran that says, well, I don't have anyone that loves me? There's someone that loves you. You just haven't discovered them yet. You got to stay around to find them. There's someone. There's something about you that's lovable. Someone is going to discover that. Even if you don't think so, there's probably someone who already has. But you're so lost in your own, I can't, that you don't recognize. But you got to stay around. You have to stay around.
Yeah, I love that. So, like, when you met your wife, Juanita, what were you in your 40s?
I was 49.
Look at that.
Yeah, 49.
Okay. I'm 54, right? And to hear that it's encouraging, right? To hear that you could be with them, you could meet somebody later in life and still have a lifetime with them. I love it.
We've been married 26 years now. My mom had asked me that about 2 months before I met Juanita. She said, "Son, when are you gonna, find somebody and get settled down?" I said, "Mama, I got my son. I'm too jaded. I'm not a schoolboy right now. I'm too jaded to fall in love with anybody, right?" Then God said, "Let me show you something." And I met my wife, and we fell in love with each other. I mean, it was mutual. First time we talked on the phone, we talked for 2.5 hours. She was in Houston and I was in Los Angeles. And we just kept that up until we said, we can't be separated anymore.
I love that.
And so that's why I feel confident, even though I'd only known her 3 months, to ask her to marry me. And she said yes. And that was like, wow. That was another responsibility. Because, I tell veterans, sometimes committing suicide is a very selfish act because, somebody's going to discover your heart. What are you doing to that person? You're passing on your terribleness to someone else in a different form. And, that's one of the things where I say I will never commit suicide because I don't want anybody who loves me to discover my body. I don't want them, if they find me, it'll be of natural cause. It'll be because God called me home. And I had no choice but to go, and that's important. People, and also I want to say to people about that love. Sometimes you have to love yourself enough that others will love you. If you love yourself enough, someone's going to love you. No doubt. That's the law of love. Numero uno. Love yourself. When you love yourself, despite everything, God God only made one of you. There's no one else on the planet like you. You are special. Just in that sense right there, you can't find no one else like you, just like you, with your experiences, with your looks, your style, your voice. You are special. Each and every one of us are special. But we forget that sometimes. But it's true. You know, we're like the snowflakes. You know, they say that all those snowflakes fall, not one has got the same pattern. That's to me, that's
Yeah.
like, man, God is something else. All those snowflakes and not one is the same. But then you go like, well, have you checked them all?
Well, that's kind of like no one ever really takes the time to count how many hairs are on your head, but I think the Bible does state right that God knows exactly how many hairs are on your head.
Yeah, well, mine is easy to count. Dr. Barry? Doc, yes.
You
We
know,
know.
I loved hearing your story, Glenn, because like Nate said, it not only inspires people, right? But it also reminds me that some of the struggles we might feel that we're facing today as a nation, right, are aren't that far removed from history. A lot of I don't want to say a lot of times, but sometimes we hear, oh, that was such a long time ago in the past. Our country's better than what it was in the past. That was centuries ago. Um, but we have service members that, like yourself, unfortunately, that you know raise their right hand in order to bleed and even possibly give their life for this country, and had to face some of those um racial disparities and those conflicts, right, right here on our own soil. And it reminds us that it wasn't that long ago, and that's why it's important, like you said, Glenn, to fight for each other, not just for ourselves, but for each other as well, to make America exactly what we that believe we can be better than what we are right now. You know what I'm saying? So what's up, Doc Barry?
For anyone listening to this now or in the future, be advised trauma has no expiration date, and you can write that one in stone.
Unfortunately, that's very, very true.
Right.
Every time I think like, I've gotten enough experience at 74 now. I can feel it coming on. It's like a month and a half ago, 6 weeks ago, I said, I need therapy. I'm going to got me a therapist. I was ahead of it, but I saw the signs. I've been around long enough to know, and sometimes you're not, if you're new at this, you're not going to pick up on it. But I did. I went and I got me a therapist, and my wife told me, she said, "Good going, baby." She knew that
It's
I did the right
amazing.
thing. Yeah, she knew.
What
So,
I
and I,
tell all my patients and veterans I meet on the outside is you have to become a student of your own post-traumatic stress. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I've said many times, um, the wolf is always at the door, which means you don't know when the alcoholism is going to kick in. You don't know when the nightmares are going to crop back up, or the rage, or anything else. It is a constantly moving target, and you have to keep your eye on it. Self monitoring is everything, hence the remark about being a student of your own post traumatic stress. It's not like those stupid crockpot commercials from the 70s that told us set it and forget it. It doesn't work that way. The damn thing is moving and breathing like the monster that it is. Word to the wise, folks.
amen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Glenn, I also like the your story just inspires people to. I think when we look at the U.S. government, right, like this big monster, big powerful machine, and you're like, how am I supposed to go up against the United States Navy or the U.S. government in order for me to secure what I know is rightfully mine, which was for your retirement, your medical retirement, and upgrading to an honorable discharge. And to have done that, and Nate, you know the fancy word, but to do that as representing yourself, right? And to go up against that big machine and to come out on top is a true David and Goliath story to me. So it takes a lot of courage, and hopefully it gives somebody else that courage to say, you know what, if Glenn Tower can do this, I'm sure I can as well too.
I hope so. And, because the only thing that I did really was work at it and believe. And at first I didn't even believe. Like I told you, my friend called me up and he was like, "Dude, you got to do this." And I was like, "I don't got to do it, but maybe I better do it." Because I didn't want to regret, the fact that I didn't do it. Um, and right now, I haven't talked about this, but I've actually taken the government back to court again. This time, I'm taking the VA to court, and this could be a very, very important case for veterans because they force us to go into the veterans court system. And I filed a tort against them outside of that system. That veterans court system is tainted. It's they got their thumbs on the scale, all kinds of ways, and especially for minority veterans, but for all veterans. I just learned as I've been working like Freund, Freund versus the U.S., which is a recently settled case, which I'm quoting in my case against them, was a case where the VA um, intentionally dismissed veterans' cases for years. For years. Hamill, Hamill versus United States. Same thing, same sort of thing. Monk Jr. right now, um, he's really he is really a man who has taken it upon himself to stand up, especially for African American veterans. But what people have to understand, when you stand up for African American veterans, you're standing up for all veterans. Because whatever the standard, and that's been the thing that a lot of people didn't understand about the civil rights movement. Those standards didn't just help black people. Those laws and those rules helped everyone. It meant
100%.
equality had to be looked at for everyone. Yes, it was black people that did it because it was black people that were forced to do it because of the concentrated situation in their lives, because of the focus of this disparity in their lives. And that's what they do. They take it, these people in the government, they take it and they say, let's do this to this group. If we can get away with it with this group, we can get away with it with everyone. Mm-hmm. We have to wake up and understand, that's what's going on now. If we allow these things that are going on now to happen with the immigrants, how long soon do you think it will be before that transference doesn't come down to all of us? So, so what I'm in this case that I'm standing up for right now, but if I can win this case, if Monk Jr. can win his case, that means that it's going to put pressure on the Veterans Court to do right, because then we'll no longer have to go to the Veterans Court to be heard, to seek justice. There'll be another federal way for us to go. Right now, they've got it great because they force everyone to go into their court, the court that Congress set up for them. Well, that's a crooked court. That court does not work for veterans. It works for the VA. Okay? There's a difference. And we need, when we really deal with it, when you're doing intentional negligence, willful negligence to people, when you're doing outright things to people to prevent them from getting their just dues, their rights, then that's wrong. I don't care who you are, VA, I don't care who you are. It's not right. And so that's what that's what I'm fighting for right now. I do quote a lot of black veterans in it, but when we win, it's not going to be just for black veterans. It's going to affect veterans everywhere. It's going to be a good thing because
That's
if
right. Legal precedent.
you can't get fairness in the veterans court, take it to the district court. Right now, the way things are set up, you cannot. So
The federal
this is a hell of a
government,
battle, man. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm trying to win.
the federal government needs to be reminded a day after day what the true cost of war is. They conveniently forget it because it's cheaper to try to sweep it under the rug, to not give veterans their due, etc., etc. Well done, Glenn.
Thank you, Doc. And well done for you,
Amen.
for the three of you. What you're doing is powerful. I wouldn't even be able to speak if it were not for what you're doing. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely a team effort, though, right? Like not one group, one person, one organization has a solution, and it's gonna take us coming together to find a proper solution, especially for our veterans, because we are such a small population of the American people, right? And people, maybe because of the whole 20-year, just coming out of the 20-year GWAT era, right? And per se, it's still going on, right? You talk about Iran and Syria and shit like that, right? Just because it's not, technically a war. I mean, we're still sending young men and women over there to put their life on the line. Some haven't come back home, but it definitely takes all of us to come together in order to not have to have happened to veterans in the past, to keep that negative stuff going on, right? But to make it better for the next one. One thing, like my leadership would always tell me, I think it was really big when I came in, is they always talked about leave the Navy better than you found it, right?
I
And so it's
love
kind of
that.
like the same thing with the VA. Well, I think what you're doing, Glenn, is you're trying to, when your day comes, when our great creator comes to call you to your final home, right? You can lay down and say, I left, the VA better than I found it. And well, I appreciate men like you and women like you that fight these big fights for us, for the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try. I'm trying the best that I can. But I learned, interesting enough, I've had several attorneys, right? Never won anything with any of them. But when I represent myself, I won. So that there's a lesson to be taught in that too, because who knows yourself better than yourself?
Right.
Right.
This has been really, really nice.
Version of yourself.
Guys, you see those paintings behind me? So I'm an artist, right? So I don't know. Can you see what's
Yep.
behind me? These paintings. So I just share with you now. See the small one under the Black Panthers there?
Hmm.
Yep.
That is Peter's work. Peter Barnes. Peter is a good friend of mine. We're like brothers, really. I'm his children call me Grandpa. So we've been friends for a long time. And this other, so the Black Panthers, I painted them that way because when I was in the American flag, we were being terrorized by police in our community. And I remember the Black Panther Party came along, and if police officer pulled over a person, anytime somebody got pulled over, we were worried that they were going to get shot or killed or something. The Black Panther Party would pull up behind them a lot of times with guns sticking all out the window, and they'd be like, we're just checking to make sure that this citizen is safe. And I thought, wow, that is really,
Wow.
really cool. And it brought like a feeling of safety. So I thought that was a great act of Americanism for them to do that. And then that's why I painted this painting of This one is called Panthers at the Ready, and I just remember that the very first comic book I ever saw with black people in the comic book was Black Panther comic book that they were distributing.
Wow.
And these guys here in the green, well, those are the Harlem Hellfighters.
Oh,
Harlem
okay.
Hellfighters of World War One, the most highly decorated unit of World War One. That and all of them you can't see because it's not close enough for you, but all of them were in the Croix de Guerre, which is the highest medal given by the French government. They weren't allowed to fight for Americans, for America, because um, the Americans thought that they would run and hide when they got shot at. And the French generals came down. They had to work out they still had to work out even though they were digging the trees every so often, right? And the French generals came and saw them working out. And they were like, we never saw them fight. Are you going to use them? And they were like, no, the first time somebody shoot them, they're going to haul ass and run. And the generals looked at each other and they were like, can we have them? And they said, yeah, you can have them, but they can't, they won't disgrace us. They can't fight in an American uniform. They said, okay. And they turned out to become the most highly decorated unit of World War One. They took on more casualties. They had so much bravery in that unit that they gave out. It's the only time it's ever happened. The French has fought many, many wars. They gave out more than 170 of those highest honors. That's like if we gave out 170 silver crosses to people, they gave to these men. And it really, one of the things that for my treatment I had to do was I wanted to study military history from black point of view. And what I began to realize is that, did you know that the military was the first place to integrate in America, um, the first government agency to integrate?
I didn't know that.
Yes.
You're talking about the first time in the 1800s, right?
Well, in the 1800s, they weren't integrated, right? But in the American Revolutionary War, they were integrated. There were a lot of black freedmen that fought there. I did some study on it, and the one group that was really essential in winning the American Revolution was the Rhode Island First Infantry. Did you know about that?
I heard of
They
them.
had a devastating attack on Cornwallis and his troops, and it was all by bayonet and long knife.
Yeah,
Hamilton
Bunker Hill. Too.
led the charge with them, and 3 days later, the British surrendered. Of course, they didn't have telephones and stuff, so they were still fighting, but they didn't realize because the news hadn't reached them that the war was over. But that attack that they did, that midnight attack that they did, that early morning attack, devastated the ranks of the British. And the thing is, that they were a group of brawlers, and the British were like standing in a line and shoot. They weren't ready for somebody to just come down and start stabbing you. Disorganized, just from every direction, and they were like, okay, that's enough. And there's so many groups like that. The black units. Reason why the military was the first to go ahead and integrate is because those black units were elite units because they had something to prove. When you have something to prove, that makes you try harder. That makes you get better. That's the reason why you have the Tuskegee Airmen. Never lost an escort, not one. That's the reason why you had the Buffalo Soldiers. They talk about the Buffalo Soldiers with the Native Americans, but when the San Juan killed Teddy Roosevelt, San Juan, and the Rough Riders, they didn't do nothing. They failed. It was the 10th and 11th Buffalo Cavalry, the Buffalo Soldiers that took that hill. That's real history. They took it. You know, Teddy and them, they faltered. And they sent in those black troops and they because they had something to prove. Okay? 761st Tank Battalion. People don't know about them. They almost single-handedly won the Battle of the Bulge. You know, the Allied forces were surrounded. Patton gave them the order, sent them in. You know, the 101st Airborne was surrounded, being pounded by the Germans' artillery and infantry. And the 761st Tank Battalion fought their way in and then joined. It became the first time in American modern warfare that black and white soldiers fought together because they had to fight together to get out. And the 761st Tank Battalion was the first American unit to cross the vaunted German line. Those people that were in those concentration camps, many of them would tell you the first soldiers they saw were black soldiers.
Wow.
Rolling up in those tanks. So
Yeah, we still need to do a better job of correcting the history books still.
They really do. They really do. But, you know, all of this information, all of these things are coming out. I mean, even whenever an oppressed group is like that and they have something to prove, like the Japanese unit, those guys were, the American Japanese unit was, they were something else. You know, they were highly decorated. They because they had something other than fulfilling the mission. They had something else. They had that camaraderie that we have something to prove about ourselves here. You know, they took away our homes, you know, and they didn't give us anything for them, you know. But guess what? You know, we're still Americans. We still believe in this country, and we're going to show them. And they did.
And for anybody who wants to know, Morgan Freeman did a really good documentary about it.
He did?
Yeah, from the History Channel.
From the History Channel, yeah. So I had to learn all of this stuff because I was asked by the medical center, VA Medical Center in Austin, if I would come and speak during Black History Month about Black military history. And so, knowing that I was going to speak, I went and did my homework, and I learned a lot of these things.
That's amazing, amazing story, and I know we could go on even longer, but we have reached our 2-hour mark. Glenn, with that, like I said, I know we could go on even longer, and so we always have an open door for you here if you ever want to share more of your story, or if there's anything that we can do to help spread your word about anything that upcoming projects you have coming on, or with your court stuff, whatever we can do to help support you in those adventures and journeys. Please, we're here to help support men and women like you. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Gentlemen, any last minute words before we sign off?
Well, I remember reading a long time ago, Martin Luther King said, hate does more harm to the hater. And clearly love has rescued you, been your savior, etc. Well done, Glenn. And it's interesting, the first part of your last name is Tower. And I think you're towering over all of us. Well done.
Thank you. I'm just a guy that cares. That's all. Trying to do what I can. And you guys are magnificent. I don't tower over any of you. We stand together. We are a tower together. A greater tower.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you for being on. And with that, everyone, especially those that stayed on throughout the whole show, we really do appreciate you all. Please like, subscribe, and share our channel. And with that, everyone have a great evening.
Good night.
Hey,
Goodbye,
Glenn, don't go
everybody.
anywhere.